On 5 News tonight, the man dubbed the unacceptable face of capitalism. Germany reels after another violent attack, and Big Sam gets the big job. MPs slam former BHS boss Sir Philip Green for running the high street chain into the ground. A high state of alert in Germany as it's revealed a suicide bomber who injured 15 people had pledged allegiance to so-called Islamic State. And Sam Allardyce is confirmed as the new England boss, but is he up to the job? Also tonight, Prince Harry talks movingly about losing his mother.
I really regret not ever talking about it, you know, for the first 28 years of my life, never talked about it.
The Royal suffered a crushing bereavement when he was just 12, and he admits he kept all the pain bottled up. And will Rio be ready? Well, the Australian Olympic squad don't think so. We'll tell you why. Welcome to 5 News Tonight. I'm Julian Drucker. He got rich on the profits of a high street giant and left it on life support with thousands of jobs at risk. Those were the criticisms levelled by MPs today at Sir Philip Green, the former boss of BHS. One of the MPs who led the inquiry into the store's collapse said Sir Philip plundered the company and should not only lose his knighthood, he should also write a multi-million-pound cheque to cover the huge cuts to staff pensions. Here's Catherine Jones.
They've been open for 88 years, but BHS stores on high streets nationwide will soon close for the last time. And today, 2 Commons committees laid the blame squarely on this man, Sir Philip Green, the firm's owner for 15 years. In one of their most scathing reports ever, MPs concluded bad business decisions and personal greed led to the retail chain's demise. Sir Philip's systematic plunder, leaving BHS on life support by the time he sold it last year.
Sir Philip Green, who got his knighthood on the basis of being king of retail, would show that he was totally not up to the task actually before him. And it wasn't a clapped-out business. He made it a clapped-out business, and it's collapsed around him, and his reputation has collapsed with it.
I could be a murderer, the way they're writing about me. I can't deal with this.
You had to
That's a ridiculous statement. Could you, sir, do you mind not looking at me like that all the time?
Today's report follows Sir Philip's testy appearance before MPs last month when he refused to accept any blame.
There's certainly no intent at all on my part.
But MPs found Sir Philip and his family had extracted £400 million from BHS and then concealed its problems from the former bankrupt he sold the firm to, this scribbled balance sheet presenting the finances as healthy. 13 months later, BHS collapsed with a black hole in its pension fund of almost £600 million, a mess Sir Philip has promised to fix.
It's resolvable, sortable, we will sort it, we will find a solution.
The union fighting for the 33,000 BHS employees and pensioners wants Sir Philip held to his word.
2 promises he made. First one was to make the pension deficit correct. He said, and that will be announced in the next 2 weeks. And he also said, and his words were, I'll re-employ the blameless staff back into the Arcadia business. And we're still waiting 5 weeks on for him actually to deliver on these promises.
20 stores closed their doors for the last time on Saturday. All the rest, 144 shops, will shut down within a month. Yet the staff and those depending on a BHS pension to support them in their retirement are no closer to knowing what their future holds. Catherine Jones, 5 News.
Well, a little earlier, I spoke to Oliver Parry, who's the head of corporate governance at Institute of Directors, and I began by asking him if the report was fair.
Well, I certainly think how it's actually been run and actually how the sale was handled is not particularly good for British business as a whole. I think Philip has some serious questions to answer, especially with respect to the deficit in the pension fund at the moment and also the handling of the sale of BHS. And hopefully, once he's digested this 110-page report, he'll be able to give some answers to this and pretty quickly.
And it's a scathing report, isn't it, today?
It is. It's pretty damning. I mean, what we've seen here, both with the Sports Direct report on Friday and also today's report, is the Select Committee show their teeth. And actually, quite rightly so. Both examples are of poor corporate governance and how the companies have been run by different individuals. And I think there has been a total breakdown with governance, especially with respect to Arcadia Group.
There is talk of Sir Philip losing his knighthood. there's the possibility, people say he's done a lot of charitable acts, he obviously has. Do you think it's possible he will pay this £571 million pension deficit off his own back and sort that
Well, he said he's going to fix it. That's what he said. So let's wait and see. I mean, clearly, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of frustration, not just within the BHS community, but also wider, politicians in particular, scathing about his role in this. So he needs to do something, and he needs to act quite quickly. And it's a matter for him, really, on whether or not he does actually fill this black hole.
But these shops are still shutting, these people are still losing their jobs, aren't they?
They are. So he has answers, he has questions to answer, and he needs to answer them pretty swiftly.
He hasn't done anything illegal, though, has he? I mean, is this a regulation problem? Is it bigger than this?
That's a really good question. So he hasn't really done anything illegal. I mean, I would imagine the Serious Fraud Office may want to take a look at it. The other regulatory bodies may want to take a look at it. There are different parties involved. For example, the Financial Reporting Council in the UK, the Audit and Accountancy Regulator, is looking at the role of Grant Thornton, who provided the advice, due diligence to Mr Chappell. They'll be looking at that. But no, at the moment, it doesn't look like there's anything illegal there. But there's a moral and ethical dimension to this, and I think that's really, really quite important.
And how do you think British business is viewed by consumers and by people in other countries after this?
Well, look, it was pretty choppy waters before Sports Direct and BHS. I think it's more choppy now. I mean, clearly, it's not going to help the face of British business. British business is taking a massive hit, both from the 2008 crisis, and these don't help. But I think it's important to emphasise that the vast majority of businesses do behave ethically and morally, and within what we would deem as appropriate standards. So these, although they're blots on the copybook, I think it's important to add that most British businesses do behave quite well.
And just finally, he was held up as this amazing retailer. I mean, really, reading this report, you can't even call him that now, really, can we?
Well, I'm not going to make a judgment on that. What I will say is I think the management of at the point of sale was poor. And I think that's really important. The sale of BHS was not handled well, both by the Arcadia board and also by Mr Chappell, and that's crucial.
We'll see what happens next. Oliver Parry, Head of Corporate Governance at the Institute of Directors, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Police in Germany say a Syrian man who blew himself up outside a restaurant in the town of Ansbach had pledged allegiance to the leader of so-called Islamic State. The 27-year-old detonated his explosives after being turned away from a music festival. 15 people were injured, but authorities say his bomb had the potential to kill many more. As Warren Nettleford reports, it's emerged he was facing deportation.
Ambulances were rapidly dispatched following an explosion in this small Bavarian town. 15 people were injured and the bomber killed by the device. More than 2,500 people were evacuated from this nearby music festival soon after. We now know a 27-year-old Syrian man who was carrying a rucksack tried to make his way into the festival, but he didn't have a ticket. German security officials have now revealed the attacker had pledged allegiance to Islamic State, and bomb-making materials were found at his home. A link to international terrorism and the so-called Islamic State can't be ruled out any more than him being unstable, or a combination of both. We should now let the security authorities do their work. This latest attack comes in a devastating week for Germany, which has experienced several shocking acts of violence, matched only by demonstrations of solidarity by citizens. A German schoolboy gunned down 9 at a fast food restaurant in Munich on Friday. A mentally ill man killed 1 and injured several others on a train last Tuesday. The authorities are keen to stress they are not all linked to Islamic extremism or the migrant crisis. And those monitoring the public mood in Germany say most still support the government's approach.
I think there is a certain fear just because you've had so many attacks in a really short time. But I think the majority of German people are able to differentiate and are able to talk about what happened. And there is still a lot of sympathy out there. And I think the majority of German people also still support the refugee policy.
The attacker, who still hasn't been named, arrived in Germany 2 years ago and was housed here after his asylum claim was refused. Whilst armed officers in Ansbach make their presence felt, investigators continue looking for clues. Warren Nettleford, 5 News.
A murder investigation is taking place after a man was killed at a party in Surrey. One person suffered serious injuries in what's thought to be a shooting incident at a house in Headley. Police have arrested 2 people, one of them on suspicion of murder.
We're particularly keen to speak to anyone who saw a white and black Mini which left the scene following the incident. At this stage, we believe the weapon used in the shooting was a handgun, which hasn't been recovered.
Police say 2 people who were arrested over the death of a 5-year-old boy at a water park were detained on suspicion of manslaughter by gross negligence. Charlie Dunn was pulled from the Blue Lagoon in Leicestershire on Saturday. He died later in hospital. And detectives investigating the attempted abduction of a serviceman in Norfolk say one of the suspects is likely to have suffered a visible facial injury after being headbutted by the victim. They say 2 men of Middle Eastern appearance tried to grab the serviceman outside RAF Marham, but he managed to fight them off. Theresa May says nobody wants to see a return to the borders of the past between Northern Ireland and the Republic as she made her first visit to Belfast since becoming Prime Minister. She says with the UK leaving the EU and the Republic staying in, there would have to be some kind of border. But she promised to help find a way that would work for everybody. From the city of Newry, Dominic Reynolds reports.
52.50. Inside Declan's one till are 2 kinds of currency. Pounds for the Brits, euros for the Irish. We're 10 minutes from the UK's international border with Ireland, but the reality is people slip in and out so freely they barely notice it.
Huge fear. What are we going to do now?
Declan's been worried ever since he woke up to the Brexit vote a month ago.
60% of the population of Ireland live within 1 hour of Newry, where you stand here. We are 5 miles from the border, and if 5 miles from here my hinterland is cut in half, then my business will suffer and will make life very, very difficult for me.
This meeting with Arlene Foster and Martin McGuinness is the start of what might be the toughest item on Theresa May's to-do list. She's said Brexit will mean Brexit, but neither of her hosts wants it to mean borders.
We've had a common travel area between the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland many years before either country was a member of the European Union. Nobody wants to return to the borders of the past. What we do want to do is to find a way through this that is going to work, deliver a practical solution for everybody.
Over the other side, and when you enter our country from Ireland, it's a blink and you'll miss it border. Well, the speed limit just changed from kilometres into miles an hour, but other than that, you really wouldn't know that you've just entered the UK. The question for Theresa May now is how much that experience changes once the Irish border becomes the edge of the EU. For decades, you really couldn't miss it. During the Troubles, the border and how it was policed was part of a tense political conversation. Could bringing it back stir up old arguments?
Is there going to be people patrolling on the borders? If you want to go up and get something from the shops up the north or just go shopping, do you need to have your passport with you?
Lots of questions.
Lots of questions, yeah, and no answers. That's the hard part of it.
Yeah, I don't want it like it was before.
Why not?
It was awkward. Yeah, just awkward, that was all, you know. Inconvenient.
For a long time, this place was in the middle of a conflict. Now it's in a conundrum. Taking back border control was a big part of the Brexit vote. So how do you do that without sending this place back in time? Dominic Reynolds, 5 News in Newry, Northern Ireland.
Well, Scotland's First Minister has outlined her next steps in attempting to secure the country's position in Europe a month on from the Brexit vote. Nicola Sturgeon listed 5 key interests she'll seek to protect during the coming months' negotiations and said the upheaval of Brexit means independence might be the best option for Scotland.
If we find that our interests can't be protected in a UK context, independence must be one of those options, and Scotland must have the right to consider that option.
Still to come on the programme, Prince Harry talks about his own grief as he continues his work with a mental health charity. The New England manager tells us he is the right man for the job.
I'm here because I think I can make the team better, and I think I'm tough enough to take it. So bring it on, lads.
All of that and more after the break. Welcome back. You're watching 5 News Tonight. Prince Harry says he regrets that he didn't talk about the death of his mother until just a few years ago. He was speaking about bereavement at an event for a mental health charity that he, William and Kate helped set up. Diana, Princess of Wales, died when he was a boy, but Harry says he just couldn't discuss it for most of his life. Layla Hayes reports.
Hosting a barbecue for high-profile sports stars, Prince Harry said he regrets not talking about his mother's death. He told former England captain Rio Ferdinand, whose wife died from cancer last year, he wished he'd opened up sooner.
I've got a friend's friend who wanted to introduce me to his 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy, and their mum committed suicide. They're now in the process of starting asking questions. You know, where's mummy? All this sort of stuff. And he just said, look, I just literally want them to meet you, because they've started asking questions, going, what's going to happen to us when we get older? We haven't got a mum. And I literally, we didn't even talk about it. We just sat down and had a laugh. And he just said to me, he goes, look, you know, there you go. There's a classic example of someone who, you know, has managed to. He's normal. He's normal, exactly. And that's all they want to know is, okay, fine. But Christ, you know, I really regret not ever talking about it. You know, for the first 28 years of my life, never talked about it.
Harry's mother Diana died in a car crash when the prince was just 12. Working with the mental health charity Heads Together, he now wants to encourage others to talk about their problems.
It's not weakness. Weakness is, I believe weakness is realising an issue in yourself and not sorting it.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, obviously one of the biggest issues is actually realising it in yourself anyway.
Yeah.
Especially with something like, you know, depression and anxiety, you start to feel as though there's something going on.
Yeah, exactly.
But unless someone tells you what anxiety actually is, how the hell are you supposed to know?
At the barbecue, Harry played French cricket with 8-year-old Jack Belton. He was invited because his football club offers emotional support to young players.
What was it like meeting a real prince?
Really exciting, and I was really happy.
Did anyone say you looked a bit like him?
Yeah.
Prince Harry says he regrets not talking about his mother's death, but he's determined to make sure anyone with mental health issues finds the courage to speak up. Layla Hayes, 5 News.
Well, let's speak now to Dr. Shelley Gilbert, who's the founder of the bereavement charity Grief Encounter, which helps support children and their families who've lost a loved one. Dr. Shelley, what can be the impact in later life of not dealing with grief properly at an early age, if they have to deal with it?
The impact can be widespread, and let's get it clear, it's not all negative, because you might ask me for some statistics, which I can quite easily give you, about higher incidence of young offenders, more teenage pregnancies, those kind of statistics. Or one new shocking one, well, shocking to me, is that bereaved children who experience premature death will die younger than the rest of the population. Yeah.
How important is it to hear Prince Harry talking about it?
Oh my goodness, we were so overjoyed this morning when we heard the news, because first of all, he is Prince Harry, but secondly, for someone as high profile as him to speak publicly and actually say what he did, that he actually regrets not speaking so early, is so poignant. And I'm not called Dr. Death for nothing. When I speak about it, I lose my friends and clear the room. But if he speaks about it, he's going to attract people in. And he's just the kind of ambassador we need to, you know, we as bereaved children should be the first ones to be able to stand up and say, yeah, it's going to have a really, really long-term psychologically and emotional and social impact, but we tend not to as bereaved children. Bereaved children tend to pick up from the adults messages such as, oh, you're fine, oh, you get on with it, you'll get over it, go back to school, let's not talk about it.
Because you lost both your parents by the age of 9, didn't you? You started this charity, and you had a great childhood, a secure childhood otherwise with relatives. You said nobody acknowledged the dark side when you were younger. I mean, is that the same for lots of children in the same case, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And we think it's a bit different today, and it is a little bit different. I mean, I've been campaigning now for some 15 years since I first wrote my book, Grief Encounter, and subsequently set up a charity. what people do is they have certain conversations, but then they shut them down. And we in our UK society shut down the opportunities for children to be able not only to talk about it, but also to think about it. And that we as adults should listen and then help the children make some sense of the senseless. Words to the unspeakable.
Absolutely, that's a very important lesson. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Shelley Gilbert. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Authorities in Spain say they've recorded their first case of a baby being born with a defect that's connected to the Zika virus. The outbreak in the Americas has caused widespread concern. A hospital official in Catalonia says the mother was diagnosed with Zika in May and decided to keep the baby. A 14-year-old and an 18-year-old have been shot dead at a nightclub in Florida in what police say was not an act of terrorism. 16 other people were injured in the attack in Fort Myers at a club reportedly holding an event for teenagers. Detectives are questioning 3 people. And more than 1,600 firefighters are trying to stop huge wildfires that are spreading near Los Angeles. The fires are now said to be covering around 33,000 acres after being fueled by high winds and dry ground. 1 person has been killed while a number of communities have been evacuated. Now, the Australian Olympic squad are refusing to move into the athletes' accommodation in Rio because they say it isn't good enough. Team bosses say the site is beset by problems, including blocked toilets, leaking pipes and exposed wiring, and instead have booked their entire games contingent into local hotels. It's just the latest setback for Brazil's games. There have been reports of athletes being robbed at gunpoint, and several high-profile stars have said they won't be competing because of the risks posed by the Zika virus. Well, earlier I spoke to Renata Brito, who's a journalist with the Associated Press in Rio, and I began by asking her if Rio would be ready on time.
By what we are hearing from athletes here, there's definitely a lot of apartments that are not ready. We have plumbing issues, we have gas leaks, we have shower issues. That's not to say that all the apartments are like that. A lot of the apartments here at the Athletes Village are ready. We've had Singapore say that theirs is in top condition. But countries like Australia, Sweden, and other countries have complained of bathrooms not flushing correctly, showers being cold, water leaking, gas smells. So definitely there's a lot that's not ready in time.
The Australia team have cited some horrendous things, as you say, blocked toilets, leaking pipes, exposed wiring, darkened stairwells, and they've said they won't move in, haven't they?
Yes, well, right now I have seen a couple of members of the Australian team entering the Athletes Village, but they have said that they're just checking to see if the apartments have been fixed. They haven't commented any further. Rio 2016 organizing committee have said that they have 500 to 600 people on a task force to try and fix the problems by Wednesday. They say that only 5% of the apartments have issues, such as the Australians' apartments.
Where you're standing, I mean, that's the Athletes Village just behind you there. It doesn't look finished, does it, at the moment?
Right, you have a lot of barriers and temporary things. It is surprising, though, because these Athletes Village is going to be sold after the Olympics as a luxury condominium. So it should be ready, and it should have been ready.
The organisers say they're working around the clock. Just quickly, issues over crime as well. There's an Australian Paralympian. She says she was robbed at gunpoint last month. A man brandishing a gun pushed her off her bike. That sounds extremely worrying, doesn't it?
Yes, that sounds worrying, and that happens a lot to local residents here. Up to about a few weeks ago, the violence was really, really high, and in the start of 2016, crime rates went up, especially homicide rates. There are daily shootings in so-called pacified slums, the favelas that are spread around Rio de Janeiro. But yes, over the last few weeks, we've seen the military being deployed here for the Olympics. So it has become much safer recently. We see a big police presence in the streets. So the security during the Olympics will probably not be an issue. It is the before and the after now that we are Rio residents are really worried about.
We will see. Thank you so much for that, Renata. Less than 2 weeks to go now. Thank you very much. He is known as Big Sam, and today the New England manager insisted he is qualified for the biggest job in English football. In his first press conference as boss, Sam Allardyce, whose CV isn't exactly glittering, said it would be the greatest challenge of his career, but he can make the team better. Peter Lane was there.
His first autographs as England manager.
Thank you.
His first photo op in the job he's calling the biggest challenge of his career. Sam Allardyce was originally turned down for the England job a decade ago and says he never got the chance to go right to the top in club football. So, after a long wait, he's now in the hot seat.
I'm here because I think I can make the team better, and I think I'm tough enough to take it. So bring it on, lads.
How do you personally shake off the shadow of not getting the job 10 years ago? If you weren't good enough then, what's changed?
I was good enough then. So
why didn't you get the job then?
So I don't know. Perhaps it was political. I don't know.
So no top job on his CV, but Sam Allardyce would highlight taking Notts County to promotion, steering Bolton into the Premier League, saving Blackburn from relegation, guiding West Ham back up to the top flight, and most recently saving Sunderland from the drop. But football writers know Big Sam wants to outgrow that past.
He feels that he's always been overlooked, that he's been unfairly judged. This is his chance, this is his big shot to prove that he's not what maybe football has tagged him as, that he's not just the man who takes over at relegation-threatened clubs, that he can do a big job, and this is the biggest job.
This summer, he also proved his dance floor prowess, so what would it take to see moves like this on the touchline?
Well, obviously being successful, not just qualifying for the World Cup, hopefully eventually, but going as far as we possibly can.
A maybe then from the man who insists England's players have the passion they need and that he has the management skills to bring out their best. Peter Lane, 5 News.
That is it from us. Sean Welby has the weather next. Thank you very much for watching. See you soon. Bye-bye.